the mania, I would just constantly remember the amount of times I've messed up before and the amount of people that I've lost. And it just got to the point where I started panicking. When in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm on medication and I'm still having these episodes, like nothing's changed.
You're listening to the latest dose of Bipolar Recorder. This podcast may cause dizziness and blurred vision. Enjoy.
Welcome back to Bipolar Recorder. This is Hunter Keegan. Thanks for joining me for another great interview today. For this installment of the show, I had a returning guest. Amaan Shabir is a young man from Birmingham, England. He's currently a student attending university and also moonlights as an independent author. Birmingham, England also happens to be the hometown of legendary heavy metal band Black Sabbath, which is fitting because Amaan's writing is pretty metal. Amaan uses fictional dystopian universes as metaphors for mental illness. He explores facets of living with bipolar disorder from unique, immersive perspectives. I really enjoyed this conversation because, in addition to discussing his work, a previously released book called Scarred Visions, as well as his soon-to-be-published follow-up novel, Unveiled Concealment, we also touch on many different aspects of social stigma against serious mental illness. This conversation covers topics ranging from creative writing to problematic social media to systemic discrimination and even to prejudice within the mental health professional community. There are no major content warnings for this installment. Let's sit back and hear from Amaan. I am joined today by Amaan Shabir, a young man living with bipolar disorder. Amaan, how are you?
I'm okay, I guess, just a bit under the weather, but just taking day by day. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm really excited to have you back on. This is your second appearance on Bipolar Recorder. On your first appearance, you were the youngest person featured on the show. And on your second appearance, you're still the youngest person. How old are you now?
I'm 19, I'm turning 20 in December.
Yeah, I think the next oldest person we had on was 22 years old. So you're kind of like the beacon for Generation Z on the show. I love having younger voices on telling us
Yeah.
about their mental health journeys and everything. So it's a real pleasure to have you back. And just for the audience, can you tell us a little bit about the specific mental health condition or conditions that you live with?
So I've got a diagnosis of bipolar disorder type 1, and I've also got generalized anxiety disorder. They go hand in hand, I guess. With bipolar disorder, for those who have been listening to the podcast, you probably understand there's already episodes of mania, which alternate with episodes of depression, and they seem to cycle. And, with bipolar type 2, it's hypomania, which is less severe. Um, and for those who don't really know much about bipolar, the media would often portray mania as like very hysterical, violent sort of things. And, with social media, you'd often have people almost belittling it. So I've seen like lots of stuff on Instagram where people are like, oh, I've dyed my hair blue today, I must be so manic, sort of thing. And hopefully, with the podcast, and stuff that Hunter and I are doing, we sort of break down the stigma and actually show what mental health actually really looks like. um I literally have had a really intense manic episode at the beginning of the year. I'm pretty much still recovering from it. It lasted around 2 months. It wasn't the worst one I've had, but it's the worst one considering I was medicated, which
Mm.
really, really frightened me. Um, and the bad thing is that I never got the fun one. I got the really emotionally unstable, just really wrecked up mania. Um, to this day, I still have no clear indication as to what triggered it, but my doctors have come up with a few theories. Around December last time, I had a small, very fast hypomanic episode,
Hmm.
and
You
I
mean
saw,
December of 2022?
yeah, December of
Okay.
2022. Yeah. So I had a very fleeting hypomanic episode, and I had very little money at that point, and me being hypomanic, I spent the rest of it. There was also I was dealing with a lot of stress at that point. Um, I'm at university now. I'm going into my second year of university mid-September. I'm doing biomedical science with a QTS. So basically, a biomedical science degree and a QTS is a qualification for teaching. It's 2 degrees at once. And with university being aware of my diagnosis, the plan was for me to go on placement so that I could be able to teach. But with that, me being slightly unstable, they were really unsure on whether it was the best idea to put me in a classroom. They didn't want to risk anything happening. And that really affected me because I felt like my progress was being postponed. So I was just stuck at university while all my other classmates were basically, progressing with their placement. And I felt
Hmm.
like I really hadn't gotten anywhere. I was like, what am I doing with this degree? It's no real point. So that was one stress that probably added to it. And also another one, when I got my provisional driver's license, I was told by my doctor that he is going to have to contact DVLA, who basically issue licenses and stuff like that. Um, because apparently, if you've got a diagnosis like bipolar, you're meant to let them know because it obviously can affect your driving.
Mm.
I was completely okay with that. Um, I thought, she's just going to let them know and they'll take some precautions. But I found out that my driver's license got revoked. And I was like, oh my God, like, that's not really fair. Like,
It was
I wasn't,
revoked because you're bipolar?
yeah. And
What?
it's ridiculous. And
That's a big difference between the United States and England. You're still living in England, I would imagine, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Do you where specifically? Can you remind me?
Birmingham.
Birmingham. Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, that's really nuts that you got denied a driver's license based off of a bipolar diagnosis. In the United States, I actually just got my license renewed not too long ago. They don't ask questions about that type of mental health history, at least not in my state. So that's really interesting. A form of systemic discrimination, honestly.
Mhm. Um, but yeah, it didn't make sense to me because when the license got revoked, I was stable. Like,
Hmm.
if I was intensely manic, it would add a bit more context to it. But
Hmm.
simply because of a diagnosis, it really, really affected me. I was like, everyone's just using the diagnosis as a scapegoat at this point. My doctor, he's really wonderful. He's amazing. He's contacting DVLA saying that I've been stable. Um, there'll be ups and downs, but I am responsible enough to know if I do have a license, I shouldn't be driving if I'm completely manic. But
Hmm.
I still should be allowed my license. So we're still figuring that out now. Um, but yeah, I feel like even the professionals, there's some sort of stigma around bipolar, and I'll
Yeah.
elaborate on that. Um, I remember maybe 2 years ago, I was hypomanic, and my doctor, I was taking driving lessons at that point, so my doctor hadn't really told DVLA yet, but he advised me to stop taking driving lessons until the episode was over, and I was like, okay, that's fine. A few days later, I went into therapy and I had my psychologist there. and she and I were discussing what my doctor had said. And I feel like I was just simply expressing my frustrations at the fact that I wasn't allowed to drive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for some reason, she said I was being argumentative
Yeah.
and that it was going to escalate. And after that session, literally 30 minutes later, I got a text from a doctor saying that they're going to increase my dosage of Seroquel.
Wow. Okay.
So that really annoyed me as well. So there's like, I do love my doctor. He's amazing, and I get loads of support from them. But I feel like they wouldn't do something like that if someone was depressed or if someone was
Yeah.
anxious. But if you have a history of being manic, then all of a sudden all the red lights start going off.
Yeah, no, that's really fucked up because I mean, you're supposed to be in a safe environment in therapy where you can express yourself, and certainly feeling frustrated about things like this is just a human response. And then it seems like there's a tendency for our human reactions to be inherently pathologized
Hmm.
by certain medical providers, and that's certainly not right.
Yeah.
You've hit on a lot of stuff just over the last couple of minutes of speaking. One of the other things you mentioned was social media and
Hmm.
Instagram and how it can be toxic. And I think that that's a really important thing to bring up that we haven't really discussed a whole lot on the show before. But I think that social media and mental health they definitely are not always allies with each other. I think a lot of times with people on Instagram, even people who are well intended, there's a lot of misinformation that gets spread, and there's a lot of confusion
Yeah.
between people, for example, posting videos of manic episodes that
Mhm.
may not really be manic episodes, or it could be something else entirely that they're just describing as mania. So you're a bit of an influencer on social media, I believe, right? On Instagram, you used to have, or may still have, quite a following on there, if I recall correctly from our first episode on the
Yeah.
on the podcast.
So yeah, I used to collaborate with like fashion designers and other influencers and stuff like that, and promote the clothing line. Um, and I did gather like quite a lot of followers. I'm still on like 5,000 followers, something like that.
Here we transition into Amaan discussing his written work. He talks about his first book, Scarred Visions, and discusses how it changed the type of engagement he got from social media, and also informed his creative process when it came to writing his next book, Unveiled Concealment.
Obviously, when my first book, Scarred Visions, came out, it was completely something brand new for the audience that I currently had. Most of them were into like fashion and stuff like that. But having Scarred Visions put out really changed the way I could use my platform. I was manic when I put out Scarred Visions, and when I wrote it, so I didn't really put a lot of thought into making something more out of it. It's just like a manic project, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I realized that people really started resonating with it, I was like, okay, this is getting, I can do something with it. And then the reviews started kicking in, and then I started getting feedback. And then university found out about it, and then my English teacher from my primary school found out about it, and she wanted me to visit her. And like everyone was
Okay.
finding out about it, and I was like, like this. It was probably the best thing that I did through mania. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I'm manic, I make both the best and worst decisions of my life. But I feel like Scarlet Vision's really changed the game up for me because I've been able to use a platform now, and people are not seeing me as just this shallow influencer who puts out modeling posts
Mm-hmm.
sometimes or stuff like that. I can really add depth into conversations now, and I feel like people are understanding me a lot more. I'm not just, a face or a picture online, I have thoughts. I'm multidimensional. I have emotions. I'm able to process those through pages. And I've been working with loads of people with scarred visions. I worked with Robin Kobach, who absolutely loved the book, and he produced an audiobook version on it. It got posted onto iTunes and Audible, so it's doing really, really well. I did get a bit of criticism from people who just did not understand the concepts, but
Fuck them. People will get it
yeah.
or they won't. Yeah, no, that's
Um,
so awesome, dude. I think that's so cool. And I've said it before on the show, but I do think there's genius that can be found in those manic periods for sure. And that's why I think of bipolar as not just a disability, but also a neurodivergence, because when you say disability, it implies that all aspects of it are negative. But there's this plethora of different experiences that can arise from mania. And yes, it can be extremely destructive in many ways, but there are cool things that can come out of it, such as creating an entire book and approaching issues in your life from different perspectives and things like that. So I think that's phenomenal. Did you go out and speak to anybody when your primary school teacher contacted you, or have you done any other things to promote the work in other formats?
so when my primary English school teacher, she wanted me to come to school, so she could just look at the book, to be fair. I remember just walking into the office, and she was there, and she was like, "You are one of the most amazing writers I've ever taught. You've done really well." And she also she used to teach one of my younger siblings, and she said that I wish they were like you, because my younger sister absolutely is nothing like me. Um, and with the school, there's 3 different campuses, so they're on like 3 different sites, and they wanted me to go to each of the sites, because it wasn't just my English teacher who was interested in it. She told other people, like my primary school maths teacher, or my RE teacher, and I was visiting them all, and they started making a joke about it. They were like, "We're gonna have to frame a picture now, and we don't know which building to put it in. We might have to fight for it," sort of thing.
Name a
Um,
library after you or something.
Yeah, and it was really, really nice though, because obviously I wasn't a student there anymore. And I got to see all the teachers from my past, but they were speaking to me more like a friend than a student. So
Yeah.
it was a really cool perspective from that. Um, I'm at university now, as I mentioned, and I've also spoken to the librarian, and they've stocked some of the books in the library as well. So I'm doing quite well, I think. I've also
Yeah.
managed to get it stocked into Waterstones and Barnes and Noble. So
Hell yeah.
I'm really trying to push it as much as I can. As I said before, when the book was first published, I didn't really think about sales as much. It was
Yeah.
just a project. It was just creative. But after seeing that, it basically hit the bestsellers list on Amazon and it was doing really well, I thought, okay, I can really push this through.
Yeah. And that was self-published, correct?
Yeah,
Like it
was
was
like,
like an independent project.
mhm.
Yeah, that's super cool how you can start making little waves through your communities with projects like that. I know when I wrote my first book and self-published it, I was like you. I was like, I'm not really thinking about this from like a sales perspective. I just wanted to have a book out. And then what
Mhm.
started happening is like even just the small number of people who read it, they started writing back to me, and I think you were one of them, like we're like, "Oh, I'm writing stuff of my own now, check it out." And I was like, oh my god, like this is crazy. There's this, you might not get this reference because it's very outdated, but have you heard of the band The Velvet Underground?
No, I haven't.
No. Okay. See, I'm old. The Velvet Underground was an experimental rock band from the 60s, and their first record that they put out, there's a saying that it only sold like 1,000 copies, but everyone who bought a copy of the record went out and started a band of their own and started creating their own music. and that's why it was influential. And I think that that's super cool. I think that's kind of like the punk rock DIY ethos of what's behind a lot of what I do. And I see some similarities with your own approach too. So I think that, you don't have to be a super well-known person to be able to instigate changes like that and to help bring things to fruition. So I think that's so cool that you're still pursuing that. You've talked a lot about Scarred Visions, your first book, and part of the reason why we're recording this right now is because you have another book coming out soon called Unveiled Concealment.
Mm-hmm.
And we were speaking a little bit right before we started the actual recording. You said that it was kind of intimately tied to a manic episode that you had earlier in this year, the one you were alluding to in the first part of this interview. Can you tell us a little bit about Unveiled Concealment? I guess, what is the general concept of it? And then we can kind of parse it out a little bit more.
Okay, so Unveiled Concealment, the concept is there's this city called Fleshborn, and the way the city works is that if you do something wrong or something flawed, it would manifest as a physical wound on your body. And the protagonist has many of these. He just covers them with his clothes and stuff, because he's ashamed to let anyone know, but also because he would be endangering himself if anyone else knew. Because there's public executions that occur every week, and the city rulers called the Scourge. They basically publicly execute the people who've got wounds on their body, as a way to keep like the society clean. And the protagonist, he eventually gets found out, and he escapes the city. He starts journeying with some other characters that he meets on the way, just trying to find a way to bring the Scourge down and tackle the city and the way the city works. It's got a few ties with Scarred Visions, because the city of Ashways, which is the setting in which Scarred Visions is set, is a city that the protagonist and the characters journey through as well. So there is a bit of a nostalgia bridge between Unveiled Concealment and Scarred Visions for the people who have read Scarred Visions.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the general moral behind the story is that flaws shouldn't be punished, if that makes sense. They should be accepted, which is where I'm going. I did on purpose leave the book on a cliffhanger because I just had a lot to write, and I thought if I'm going to write this all in just one book, then no one's going to want to read it because it's going to be too big. So I definitely am going to carry on with the sequel. The story's unfinished, but with what I've got in mind, I think it will really resonate with people who are looking for self-acceptance more than anything else. And also for me, I feel like Unveiled Concealment, the moral in the story really resonates with me, but also might resonate with other people. So almost like a reminder for both of us. Because I really, really, really struggle with self-acceptance after such an intense manic episode.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to the manic episode and sort of explain what happened and why I struggle with it a lot. It was between January of this year and ended around mid-March, and then I had a really severe depression straight after. The mania was not the typical upbeat, euphoric mania that a lot of people get.
Not the happy, not like happy, haha, because that's what a lot of people think. Mania is happiness, depression is sadness, but it's not like that. You can have dysphoric mania as well.
Yeah. I had dysphoric mania, as you mentioned, and it was really intense. As I mentioned before, it was the most intense one I had, considering I was on medication. It started off with irritability at first. So I thought, okay, maybe it's a sign that I'm getting manic or hypomanic. Maybe it'll just disappear. then after around 2 weeks, it just exploded. I was not sleeping, I was not eating, I was not drinking, I was all over the place. I was able to be on placement at that point. It just got to the point where I would literally just walk out classes, get off school campus, and just never return. And obviously, the school had massive issues with that, and the university was getting complaints, and it was all over the place. But I really feel like that manic me really I feel like he was hurt while he was manic. A lot of people feel the regret after mania, but I feel like during that mania, everything was just spiraling out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed a lot of reassurance from people, but because I was so emotionally unstable, it came across as very needy, very obsessive. Like over the smallest things, I would need a lot of reassurance, and that's got something to do with why I'm still struggling to accept myself from that manic version of me, because I am still trying to erase that memory of manic me from people's minds, if that makes sense. So like, I was so emotionally and mentally unstable, and I was constantly asking for reassurance, that now if I'm struggling with something and I ask for reassurance, people's minds instantly snap back to when I was manic and they think something's wrong, or they snap back to the neediness or the hysteria that I was showing when I was manic. So I feel like I had to be I have to be so composed and keep myself together, just because I would rather people recognize me for where I am now compared to where I was before when I was ill. So there was a lot going on. That was to do with myself, but also I had a connection with someone. I still do, and that person often feels like they're not good enough for me, and that really hurt me as well, because I was like, what do you mean not good enough for me? You're amazing. Like, everyone has flaws, everyone messes up sometimes. And it really affected how I started seeing people and how I started seeing life. I was like, how can you be so self-deprecating when I see all these amazing qualities and you don't? And even when I mention them to you, you still convince yourself that you're not a great person. And that's sort of what inspired the concept of, having wounds on your skin in Unveiled Concealment and trying to find acceptance through them. And it was through questioning why that person couldn't value themselves or see themselves the way I do, that it made me internalize my own self-worth. And I started questioning how I was like, hang on, I am seeing the value in this person, but I'm still doing what they're doing. I'm still questioning myself. I still think I'm flawed. So the book really has got to do with myself and everyone else just as much.
Okay. So you said that you were looking for reassurance a lot. What kind of reassurance were you seeking from people?
Mostly that I didn't want to be left behind or abandoned, if that makes sense. Because during the mania, I would just constantly remember the amount of times I've messed up before and the amount of people that I've lost. And it just got to the point where I started panicking because, again, it was the worst one considering I was on medication. So when in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm on medication and I'm still having these episodes, like nothing's changed. Like, and I thought, if nothing's changed, then the output of this episode is going to be exactly the same compared to when I was unmedicated. So it was very clinging onto people as much as I could. And fortunately, the people who I was clinging onto understood what was going on. But again, at the same time, right now, I feel almost sheepish if I try and ask for reassurance over other things, because I feel like they would just snap back in the memory to when I was manic. And I didn't really treat them the best way when I was manic either. I was very overflowing with insecurities and distraught and very negative emotions. And I feel like if I was to bring any sort of memory back to that, that's sort of how they would see me still, even though I'm not like that. It's really weird because people think if you're not in an episode, then you're doing great. But in reality, I'm pretty much still fighting that manic me, because there's still fragments of me scattered around that I'm still just trying to pick up.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that mania and serious mental illness in general, but I think especially mania, can have catastrophic outcomes on relationships of all sorts, professional relationships, personal relationships. It can be extremely taxing. And I can definitely relate to what you're saying. When I was going through my really bad manic episode in 2015, I destroyed a lot of relationships and I alienated a lot of people. For me at that time, people around me didn't know I was bipolar. I didn't even know I was bipolar, and they had no idea like what was happening. And in some cases I lost those relationships permanently, but in other cases I was able to reestablish them over the years and get close with those individuals again. But it was a very, very long healing process that needed to take place before that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
You create these fictional dystopian worlds and use them as metaphors for different aspects of the human experience. Of course, bipolar is one of those aspects. And you've mentioned a lot about the shame that people live with when they are going through these different experiences and experiencing these realities and stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that shame is one of the biggest things that you're trying to step away from through the process of writing these different works, by sharing your stories with people and bringing more light to the reality of these conditions and displaying how they can impact you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just anything got to do with breaking down the stigma around mental health, that's just my aim and my goal. With any project that I do, really. I feel like shame is just such a huge component, not just in one mental health condition, but in almost every single one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's sort of like you don't even have to have a mental health condition to feel shame. I feel like it's just a universal experience, which really brings my work together and makes it so accessible to everyone else. Because there's just loads of different experiences within scarred visions, for example. Like I mentioned the first time I showed up on the podcast, that the key component is scarred visions being a metaphor for bipolar disorder, but it does touch upon themes such as like friendships, love, heartbreak, and breakdown of all those relationships. So I feel like bringing together the stereotypes of a mental health condition, showing it what it really is, and also tying it with universal experiences so that people can actually understand how it looks like in a real life situation,
Yeah.
was the purpose of Scarred Visions. And with Unveiled Concealment, it's got to do with more broader topics, but the people who have read Scarred Visions will also see, as the characters explore Ashways, they'll understand that it's actually got to do with bipolar. But at the same time, it's really weird because I was getting loads of positive feedback about Scarred Visions, and this is what I really love about writing metaphorically. Ashways are meant to be a metaphor for mania, but like you can't escape the city, you're trapped in it. That's sort of how I saw mania. But I got messages from loads of different people, and they were like, for me, ashways is my struggle with addiction, or
Hmm.
ashways is my struggle with being in a toxic relationship and can't get out. So I sort of speak for the book, but then I let the book speak for everyone else, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the reader, the audience draws parallels between what they're feeling in their own lives, and your work clearly resonates with them in some way. I think that's really, really cool that people who, even if they don't live with bipolar disorder, they can still relate to these things, because being bipolar doesn't mean you're like an extraterrestrial
Yeah.
creature of some kind. Like, you're just a human being. Everyone is a human being, right? And it's not like
Mhm.
these experiences that we have are unfathomable. I think people can relate to them on some level. I think that maybe it's easier for people to relate to depression because that's a little bit more common of an experience. It's a little bit easier to wrap your head around, I think, for most people. But when it comes to mania, it can be much more difficult to articulate. And sometimes using metaphors such as ashways or other aspects of your books, that can be a different way to describe it that makes people able to understand it more deeply. So that's definitely really cool. Were there any challenging areas of writing this book? Was there anything that you found difficult about visiting as you put this together?
Um, I feel like I sort of pressured myself into writing a more traditional novel than Scarlet Visions. Scarlet Visions is very unconventional, I like to call it. It's got lots of different formats of writing. It's got poetry, it's got letters, it's got autobiography, and it's of course got the dystopian fictional narrative. And that gathered quite a lot of mixed reviews from people. And I was like, okay, for some reason, I felt like it wasn't my first work as a proper author, whatever that means, sort of thing. Um, because like people, when they found out I wrote a book, they were expecting something like Harry Potter, and then they just got a vision, and they're like, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I sort of did have to try and pressurize myself into writing a traditional novel per se. Um, but it was also the fear of what if my work is not as good as Scott Visions, because bear in mind I wrote Scott Visions when I was manic.
Hmm.
So it was like, oh God, like am I still going to be creative? Are my medications going to block down my creativeness? Am I going to be able to get through writer's block? Um, and of course, like writing something I'm passionate about is something I'm never going to stop. But it was sort of, I want to make something, I want to put something out, but I don't know what to do about it. So I started very like small chapters at first. I started writing poetry just to get the creative juices flowing. I started reading Scott Visions again just to give myself a reminder of ashways. I started listening to music and instrumentals that would sort of set the tone for the book.
Okay.
Um, and slowly but surely, I started getting my my mind started working again, because I hadn't written in a long time, and I just wrote down the first three chapters and I sent it to a few people, and I was like, "What do you think?" And they they just sent back, very generic things like, it's really good. Like,
Yeah, like useless feedback. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like,
yeah,
okay.
like, I can literally send them the alphabet and I'll be like, "That's amazing." So like, I was like, I really need someone to critique it. So I started sending it to people who I know do not like reading. Um, they found it a bit annoying. They were like, I don't like reading them on. Why are you sending me this? I was like, just read it. And they read it and they're like, this is actually really good. So I was like, okay, this is an opinion that I can go with. Um, and I guess I really just pushed myself to write as much as I could per week. I didn't want it to be something that I'd start to do and then end up not doing.
Hmm.
I wanted to make sure I'd get the book done because a lot of the time, even with like past projects, I would start and then I just lose motivation or lose interest with them, um, and just not continue it. So I feel like the motivation for writing the book um, really got me through those times where I just basically felt too lazy to do anything.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you have any advice for anyone who's thinking about getting started on a project like this?
Oh, actually, I helped one of my friends, Finley Porter, publish a book recently. It came
Okay.
out like less than a month ago. Um, I'd say just into I think the biggest issue people have with writing is keeping on track with where the plot line goes and also writer's block. My advice would be for writer's block, if you don't know how to write a scene, write the scene before or after, and then come back to it.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes it's happened with me with like Unveiled Concealment. I would write a bit and I would be like, okay, I just don't have the words to write the next chapter. So I would write what I would assume would happen after, and then it would let me fill in the gap a bit more easier. And in terms of like plot lines and stuff, a lot of people are like, how do you manage to stay on plan with what you're doing? And I just literally say to them, I don't. Like Unveiled Concealment at first, it was poetry. Same with Scarred Visions, actually. It began as poetry and then it sort of branched out into something else. Um, with Unveiled Concealment as well, I was planning on killing off a few characters. I just didn't. I decided to, let the story develop and let the characters develop and let the storyline just go with a flow, essentially. Um, but yeah, it was a pretty lengthy project. I started writing maybe around March time. That was when like the first few drafts were just coming through. Compared to Scarred Visions, which I basically wrote the manuscript within 4 days,
Hmm.
and then I started editing because I was manic. So Unveiled Concealment is very thorough, um, in terms of I was going back and checking everything. I was re-editing everything. I was making sure everything was perfect. Whereas Scarred Visions was more me being manic and just not really caring what goes in there. It was very impulsive. But that's the great thing about it as well. It was impulsive. It basically showed exactly where I was. Um, because as I mentioned before on the previous episode that I was on, the majority of Scarred Visions was written through Dictate. So it was things that I literally said in real time,
Mm.
um, during a manic episode. Um, so it was Scarred Visions was a very impulsive, manic project.
Hmm.
Um, and Unveiled Concealment is more of what can I do when I'm stable, sort of thing. And I really love the book. I think it's a really good story. And I'm definitely thinking of making a sequel to it because I don't like leaving things on cliffhangers, which I annoyingly did, but I had my reasons. But yeah, Unveiled Concealment is even at right now, I have a voice actor working on an audiobook. I sent him a PDF of the book actually, and he really enjoyed it. And he was like, I'm going to produce an audiobook of it. So it's sort of following in the footsteps of Scarred Visions in the fact that it's got all four formats coming out. Um, there's quite a lot of anticipation for it. Actually, if you go onto the Barnes and Noble website, there's actually a pre-order button.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. I agree with you. I think that outlining stuff excessively can be detrimental. I find that what is useful for me is to put just like a very, very general, complete bare bones outline of where I think a story is going to head. And then I just start writing and I see where it flows and I see where it starts going. And then over time, things come together. It does take a lot of editing though. But I think
Mhm.
that's really interesting. I think I had forgotten that with Scarred Visions, you had used auto dictation software
Mhm.
for that. That's really interesting because I actually, not for my actual books, but for my journaling purposes, like my own personal journals, I use an app called Otter to
Mhm.
transcribe me just like ranting into my phone, you
Yeah.
know? And that's actually a good way to go back through after the fact and pick out like the actual good ideas and go from there. So I think that's a really interesting approach as well.
Yeah, for me, the use of dictate was it was just very convenient for me at that point. I was you could imagine manic me. I was at college at that point. I had exams. I was very hyper focused on working on my book and getting stuff published. So being able to have an app with dictate on it made it very convenient for me. So I could be writing or speaking while I was on the bus or while I was going to the shops or stuff, rather than being sat down at a laptop just typing away. Um, but I didn't intentionally use dictate for the sake of showing people that this is a direct reflection of mania.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but sort of after the book was published, I was like, I did that with dictate, and it's a book based on bipolar, and I really want it to be a reflection of bipolar. And the fact that I used dictate while in a manic episode, I think was essentially the best way to go about it. I didn't want to filter anything down. I didn't want to change anything or reword anything that I put down into the book. I just thought that's manic me. I'm not going to filter it. I'm just going to publish it and let the world see it. I mean,
Yeah, it adds an additional level of authenticity to it almost.
yeah.
Very cool. What other self-care strategies do you practice aside from writing?
Um, well, that's a bit of a difficult question to be fair.
Or is
I
it
feel
just
like
writing?
I feel like I've made writing my entire personality.
Yeah.
Um, I do enjoy. This is going to sound really boring, but I really love documentaries.
Yeah.
I just like sitting down and just watching documentaries. I was watching one the other day called Fatal Attractions. It's basically about basic exotic pets essentially, and like how it can all go down really bad.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I just like educating myself through different forms of media. So sometimes I'll be on Twitter and I'll just see what's going on in the world, because obviously you've got news and stuff like that on Twitter. Documentaries. I've got like comfort movies too and comfort TV shows. I love Modern Family. That's one of my favorite shows to watch. Um, but they're more distractions, I guess. I usually use them when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I
Yeah.
really don't know what to do with myself. Um, I do enjoy going out just like in the rain, essentially. If it's rainy weather and I'm feeling a bit shit, I just like go out and go for a walk. I used to take my bike out as well. A few years ago, I used to go bike riding. And just keeping in touch with as much people as I can. I've got a really close friend called Rayan. You might have seen her interact with your tweets a few times, but it's really, really bizarre how like intertwined we are. When I feel manic or hypo, she's also manic or hypo.
Hmm.
Um, so like it's just having someone who you can relate to, even if it's just one person. That you won't feel judged, or you won't be afraid of them not understanding what you're going through because they're going through the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So just like communicating your thoughts and feelings with someone who's gone through something similar can really help.
Yeah. Peer
Um,
support and community.
yeah, I think what else? I've got quite a few close people who I speak to, but there's usually just two people that I would completely trust with how I'm feeling deep down.
Hmm.
Um, I'm quite a private person. I don't really like talking too much about where I am mentally, which is some people think it's a bit of a contrast compared to what they see on social media, but I like to advocate for mental health, but my personal experiences on mental health, I don't really talk about as much through Instagram or Snapchat. So if I'm feeling really, really bad, I would basically just rant about it with someone. And it's just getting that off your chest and your shoulders, just to know that, as they say, a problem shared is a problem shared is a problem halved. Um, but yeah, just managing to keep in contact with people and talk with people really helps massively, I feel. Um, and music is amazing.
Hmm.
That's definitely something I love doing. Just listening to it, even if it's just instrumentals or whatever, just managing to calm down. I tried meditating last night actually, because I was feeling very sentimental and very sensitive. I really needed to get out of that. Um, Meditating, I had this very bad experience with meditation just because it was really awkward because it was first introduced to me by my therapist,
Hmm.
and she was basically telling me to meditate, and she would literally just stare at me through it for like 10 minutes, and I was like I was like it
Great.
was really awkward, so it put me off. But I definitely want to get back into it again and just give it another go. That's something I'm definitely wanting to try. But I think as well, self-care is more than just doing things when you feel like shit.
Yeah.
It's it's more of a lifestyle, I think, like making sure you're eating well, exercising well, making sure you're just trying to be as diverse as you can with all the different things that can actually contribute to your health. Um, I think you might remember when someone mentioned on Twitter something about like your diet can absolutely cure your mental health conditions, stuff
Hmm.
like that. I found that quite damaging, to be
Yeah.
fair. Um, I know that I keep on track with my medication. I go to therapy, and I'm also very good with my diet now. Like I'm making sure I'm staying hydrated. I'm making sure I'm eating clean. I'm eating healthy, and I'm getting all my vitamins and minerals in, and I'm taking supplements if I need to. Um, but I still get episodes. Like I still
Hmm.
got an episode earlier this year. It adds to a stereotype that mental health can just be fixed at the snap of your fingers. Like if
Yeah.
that was the case, then we wouldn't have mental health conditions right now. With like the advancement of medicine and technology, why do you think there's still so many people struggling with mental health? It's because it's not something that can be fixed as easily as some people assume it is.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not just a matter of simple lifestyle changes. It can also involve, like you said, the use of medication
Mm-hmm.
and other things as well. It is interesting though. There is more and more research coming out that's showing how closely intertwined nutrition is with mental health. So
Yeah.
they are closely related, but I hear what you're saying in terms of like it's not a matter of like eat more salad and then you're not going to be manic. It doesn't work that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, everything is definitely very, very closely tied together when it comes to physical and mental well-being.
Yeah. I read an article not long ago saying that the hormones that basically trigger anxiety can are actually more found in your gut than they are in your mind.
Hmm.
So whatever you eat can literally trigger or calm down your anxiety. And I found that quite shocking, to be fair, because I thought anxiety is basically just in your mind, but it's really mostly in your gut. I'm not implying that, if you eat something you don't like, you're gonna get anxious or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. But nutrition or lack of nutrition can really trigger anxiety, because it's essentially your body alerting you that you're not getting what you need, and it sends you into a panic mode essentially.
Definitely. Well, we've got Scarred Visions, and now we have Unveiled Concealment. When is Unveiled Concealment coming out?
So the paperback hardcover are coming out on the 20th of September.
Okay.
And since the ebook is coming out on the 1st of October.
So we've got September 20th for the paperback, October 1st for the ebook and audiobook.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you would like to plug while you're on the show? Any social media that you're on or anything?
Just my Instagram is Amaan Shabir official. That's where I'm mostly active. Twitter, I literally forget I have on my phone, and I just be bored and I'm just scrolling through my phone. I'm like, oh yeah, there's Twitter, and also Threads as well. I'm the same with Threads.
Threads is really stupid, man. I've been trying. I have a Threads profile because I have been dabbling in Instagram for like the last year, and I don't even like Instagram to begin with. And then Threads is just like, it just reminds me of a really, really watered down version of Twitter. I don't know. But
I was enjoying it for the first like 3 days that it came out, and then I literally just forgot about its existence. I was like,
I don't know what kind of content it's really for. I've been using it to post memes of shit, and that's the only thing I can. I don't even like mental health memes, but when I find ones that I do think are kind of funny, I just put them on Threads, and I'm like, okay, I guess that's what this platform is for. So I will be sure to put that info in the episode description for everyone. Well, Amaan, thank you so much for coming back on. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
It's nice speaking to you too.
Thanks for listening to this installment of Bipolar Recorder. Amaan Shabir can be found on Instagram at Amaan Shabir Official. That's AMAANSHABIR Official. His book, Unveiled Concealment, will be coming out on September 20th of this year in paperback and hardcover. The ebook and audiobook will be released on October 1st. Check out the show description for links to his work. I have some exciting news of my own that I wanted to briefly mention as well. In a few weeks, I will be appearing at Penn State University, my alma mater, to do some speaking engagements related to bipolar disorder and addiction recovery. I'm extremely stoked for this and will be sure to keep you all posted as things continue to develop. My name is Hunter Keegan, and I'm on Twitter, now apparently known as X, at HHKeegan. Bipolar Recorder is on Twitter at Bipolar Recorder. Also be sure to follow at Bipolar Recorder on Instagram, Mastodon, and yes, even Threads. We have a wide-spanning social media presence where you can find all sorts of great bonus content. Remember that Bipolar Recorder is an independent podcast. To support us, remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also support us financially on patreon.com and receive exclusive merch and more. Have a wonderful and safe day, evening, or night, wherever you are. Bipolar Recorder is a listener-supported show. To help keep the show running, consider checking out our Patreon page or visiting bipolarrecorder.com.
Unless otherwise stated, the hosts and guests on Bipolar Recorder are not licensed mental health professionals. Bipolar Recorder is not a substitute for therapy or professional medical intervention. If you are having a mental health crisis, please contact your local emergency services.